topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Portland. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Well, let me tell you, you have been writing us, telling us you wanted a show on functional medicine. I got to tell you, I cannot tell you how big a topic this is across the country. And gosh, a year ago, I would have said, what is functional medicine? But what I have learned now, because we're doing shows now in other parts of the country, I can see why this area is so important. But what's even better, we were able to get one of the top experts in functional medicine. The name of the practice is Upgrade Medical. Let me welcome you to Dr. Chris Clarinomos. Good morning. Good afternoon, Chris.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Flattering intro.
Listen, I got to tell you, I am so excited about this show. In fact, we started promoting it 2 days ago, and it's really amazing. We got about 8 or 9 texts already, and they're all basically the same thing. Is like, what is functional medicine? But first of all, tell us about your practice.
So my practice is just me. It is focused on personalized medicine, everything from chronic illness to optimization and longevity. Basically, I'm applying a functional medicine model to whatever's needed based on the goals of the person. And we leverage a lot of tech and a lot of cutting edge therapies to do that.
So you also, I guess, anti-aging would come under that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the longevity and optimization part. I've been doing this since the beginning. I actually knew some of the founders of functional medicine. I was very fortunate. And so I've been doing this a long time. Historically, I had mainly done chronic complex pain. That's what I was mainly known for. And chronic disease syndromes, chronic fatigue, autoimmunity, those sort of really complex, unfortunate problems. And so what I did was apply these principles that we can use for both health, wellness, optimization, anti-aging, longevity, but I was applying them to these chronic illnesses. And so I still do that, but I also have now focused more on the preventative side more recently.
Chris, I got to tell you, to me, what I have learned from functional medicine, that most people know their body. They know if there's something wrong. They go to a doctor and the doctor does all the blood work and says, we're not seeing anything wrong. But you personally know there's something's not right with your body. You go and see a functional medicine clinic, and what you do is you find out what the source is. And I think that is just incredible.
Yeah, that is that's the whole sort of key principle of the model. And it's not a disparity on standard biomedical model at all, because that has obviously a very important place in our world. It's just different, right? And like you said, often people feel something is off or not right, or that they just can't get what they want, right? They're used to X, but now they're feeling Y. And when you go to a conventional doctor, it's different. They're looking at emergent sort of things. Is there anything imminently wrong that we need to address? Is there an acute symptom that needs to be managed? Is there something that we have to address based on XYZ guidelines? But those are all sort of population-based strategies, right? And that has its place. It's important. It's where we generate research, but it's not personalized, right? So for example, labs you were mentioning, most functional medicine people will draw far more labs. I always joke that
Yes.
take out all your blood and then, after you recover for 3 days, we'll go through it all and tell you what's there. But there's a reason for that, right? We're looking for patterns and we're looking to get to root cause identification so that we can figure out what that problem is. Right. And so that's a much deeper dive, right? It's narrowing lab ranges to optimal levels instead of population-based ranges, right? Because between here and here is normal based on the population. But we know, scouring literature, going through the research, looking at what's personally optimal, that range is like this. Right. So you can look at it something like a bell curve in school. A C- is passing, a D+ is even passing. Do you really want D+ for your health? No, you want to be AB, right? And not every single lab marker is important to be in an A+, right? But if 5 of them are at a B-, well, that together pattern may make the whole picture a worse scenario than an individual lab marker. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We just got a text in from the Portland area. I am so glad there is a show like this. I have been wanting to find a podcast show that would talk about functional medicine. Uh, Dr. C, it's funny because they're already calling you Dr. C already. Dr.
Well,
C,
the
will
last
you
name's a
be?
mouthful.
Yes, they want to know, will you be talking about stress?
Sure. I mean, stress is always something we look at and acknowledge in the bigger picture, both from a psychological standpoint and a physiological standpoint. Stress has a lot of impact, right? The famous model was from a person called I'm gonna mangle his name, but Seal, that did a stress model, right? And so in the sort of naturopathic functional medicine world where this came out of, we look at adrenal function and cortisol and things like that, but it goes well beyond that, right? Stress impacts everything: your mood, your neurotransmitters, your blood sugar as it relates to cortisol, your sleep patterns, right? Your overall health. Stress is impacted. And then the downstream effect of that stress has really broad implications. If you're not getting deep sleep, you're not detoxifying your brain. You're not in a restorative sleep to recover physically, right? Then of course, that makes your mood worse and you're already stressed. Then that impacts relationships. Then that can lead to anxiety, depression. Then now you're adding, high levels of cortisol that, maybe creates insulin resistance, and then you gain belly fat. And then it's this cascading snowball. And that's kind of the essence of functional medicine, is that you can take this singular, whether it's a lab marker or a symptom or a physiological mechanism, and link that, right? And then follow that chain, follow that thread, if you will, to get to what's causing it and address those things.
We just got this is a lot of text for the first show. Does
Well, hopefully they're
functional
good ones, so we'll see.
yes, no,
See.
we're doing great. Does weight loss come under the heading of functional medicine? Do you treat weight loss?
So I do. I will preface that by saying I prefer to call it metabolic fitness,
Okay.
right? Because weight loss is aesthetic, right? And of course, everybody has some degree of vanity, including myself, right? I don't want a big gut. That being said, right, that's not the important piece. The important piece is the metabolic burden of that, right? So excess weight causes, right from the start, a mechanical load on your joints and spine. Then you have a hormonal shift. You have an inflammatory shift. You have glucose and insulin resistance. Then you get fatty liver, right? As if fat's accumulated around your organs, you could be skinny as a rail, but if you're skinny fat, you're metabolically unhealthy, right? So when people say weight loss, I prefer to sort of tout it as a more circumferential, encompassing metabolic process, right? And that's what we try to address. Not that we won't use some of those, famous things that are all over Instagram and Facebook, your tirzepatides and GLPs. That's sure a part of it, but also eating habits, sleeping, addressing the inflammation, modulating your hormones. I mean, this is a weight loss. We hear about it. I get a lot of calls from women, right? Perimenopausal, postmenopausal. I just can't lose this weight. I feel like crap. Blah. Oh, sorry. Something like that. And the reality is their entire hormonal patterns have shifted. And then that impacts other things like that thread that we were talking about. And so you have to intervene on all of those pieces to create a healthy person, because you don't just want to, say, be skinny. You want your body to be metabolically flexible so that, unlike some of my peers, I don't like medicine to be a cult, right? I think people have to live their life as well, right? You want to go to an occasional birthday party. You want to go celebrate your anniversary. You want to, right? You want to, we know all alcohol is bad, but, maybe you want to enjoy a drink occasionally. Right, you should be able to do that, and your body should be able to handle it, providing there's no problems that are specific to that. So you want your body to be metabolically flexible enough to handle carbohydrates, but also handle fat, and to be able to shift between those things in an appropriate manner regularly. That's what makes us metabolically healthy. You want to maintain low inflammation, have low visceral or organ fat, right? And good muscle density. And that'll improve all sorts of parameters. So yes, weight loss is a great goal, but the bigger picture is it's going to make you healthier.
What about, we just got a text in wanting to know how much hormones, thyroids play a picture in functional medicine.
Huge. That's the answer. It's a very key part. And that kind of goes back to, so hormones are interesting because they're part medical, part social, and part philosophical. And I'm going to tell you why. Let's take free T3. So often not measured. That's a biomarker of thyroid. Okay. It's often not measured by regular Western medicine. They only typically measure the feedback loop. But that's the only part of the thyroid that's truly biologically active in the system. So if you're low there, the rest of your numbers could be great. And you're going to feel fatigued. You're going to feel sluggish. You might have dry skin, brittle nails, hair loss, inability to lose weight, all of those things. And optimizing that will make a huge difference, right? So that's kind of pulling that thread. But it's a little bit, that's the medical part, the lab part. But the art part, the sort of philosophy part is, well, what if that person is what I would say on a lab a little functionally low, but they have zero fatigue. Their energy is phenomenal. They're not having trouble gaining weight. They have no symptoms of thyroid. Do you want to treat it? Right? That's where the sort of philosophy comes in. Same thing with testosterone and estrogens, right? You know, there's culturally, some women think menopause is natural and it's appropriate, and that's the stage of life I'm going to be in, and I'm not replacing them. That's okay if that's their choice. From a medical side, I'd say, well, if we're trying to stay fit and healthy and live well, you don't want to lose the things that we had when we were at our optimal peak, and they should be replaced. But then within that concept, if you go to a gynecologist or a urologist and they measure, they again probably wouldn't measure all of the labs that we would, but we would take that in context with your symptoms and say, well, look, we should probably, if we optimize this, you're not only going to have improvement in, you know, your weight loss that we were just talking about, but you're going to have cardiovascular health. You're going to have improved bone density. You're going to have reduced pain levels, because estrogen and testosterone both are modulators of the pain receptors, right? You're going to have improved cognition. All of those things go together. So it's a key system of the body, the hormonal system. So that is one of the key systems we always try to address.
Here's one from Salem.
Mild
really enjoying your show. I've been diagnosed with osteoporosis. How do you treat your patients with osteoporosis?
Yeah, so some of that's going to depend on age and cause, right? You know, sometimes it's induced by a disease state, which, you know, is a little bit different approach. If it's just sort of aging, basic level, we're going to look at what's causing that. Is it, you know, we know certain things like they haven't exercised, they haven't added resistance training, that's going to reduce bone density. Postmenopausal or andropausal for the men, you're going to lose hormones, that's going to cause bone loss. Something like you can take all the vitamin D you want, but you need vitamin K2 to get that calcium and into the bone, keep it out of circulation and into the bone, right? So we want to look at all those things: nutritional status, hormonal status, what kind of exercise they're doing, have they added resistance? And then we can even leverage some technology such as pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. So these are mats that generate an electrical field that sort of modulate the cellular membrane, but have evidence for increasing bone density. So it's similar to how orthopedic surgeons use a bone stimulator for bad fractures. You do enough of this, you can increase bone density. And you couple that with the other things, layering those strategies, you can significantly improve it. That tech's even used by NASA to keep bone loss from happening to astronauts.
I'm going to try to get in as many of these questions as I can. This is from Eugene, Oregon.
Okay.
This is Kyle. He wants to know, do you do telemedicine?
I do.
Okay.
Depends on how complex. Some things are just better done in person, but simple things can often be done telehealth, and certainly things like follow-up visits, right? I prefer the initial one to be in person, or at least the initial lab review if we've done a deep dive, just because there's so much to go over. But often we can do, you know, follow-ups, check-ins, things like that with telemedicine, or if it's a real simple, you know, sort of simple initial, we can do that.
Rob in Med
2.5 hours to come.
I'm sorry, what?
He doesn't want to drive the 2.5 hours to Portland to come see me.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, telemedicine, I guess, since COVID,
yeah,
people are starting to get used to different types of telemedicine. But, you know, I think a doctor like yourself, Chris, that specializes in medicine, there are so many people out there because we get the letters that are so frustrated because their doctors could not find. Now, you know what? If you break your leg, you're not going to go to a functional medicine doctor.
Of course.
That's not what we're talking about. But there's so many areas that you can go to the next step, Chris, that
Yeah.
people are now that they're learning about functional medicine. I'm telling you, I think it is going to be one of the most popular areas of health, and we're so blessed to have you on the show. We've we've got a few more minutes. I want to find out what do you think is most important thing a person can do to maintain their health?
So, believe it or not, I would say the pillars of health first. So that's sleep, exercise, good nutrition, and your mental health. And your mental health can also encompass things like your social interactions or your spiritual beliefs, etc. Right? Dietary with maybe some basic supplements. Not everybody needs to take 200 pills a day, right? A good quality diet, fresh, organic, whole foods, real foods, not things found in a box, good sleep. Even a mild case of sleep apnea that you don't notice will take over a decade off your life, drive up inflammation, and alter your hormones. And you're not fixing that with med, right? You're going to fix it with fixing your sleep apnea. I tested because I have somebody that I trust that did that, and I'm thin. I don't have obstructive wrist, but I was a fighter back when I was younger and scrappier, and it broke my nose a lot. And I had a lot of blockage in there, and he kind of what I call, he's going to yell at me for this, but I call it the roto-rooter. He went in, opened things up so that I had better physiological airflow. And then I have a little oral appliance, like a little night guard. So it resolved it completely. And so you don't always have to have the Darth Vader mask. There's some other ways to do that. So if you address those core things, and honestly, I feel like probably everybody should go through periods of counseling, cognitive behavioral training, and keeping, like you said, stress and your sympathetic nervous system in check is critical. Your sympathetic nervous system is the thing that typically goes into overdrive, and it offsets our parasympathetic. And that's usually modulated by the vagal system, and I'm a big fan of treating that. But you want to keep those 4 pillars of health. Then the next thing is addressing things before they become a problem, right? Addressing them as a systems level approach for your whole health, and having consistency and compliance over time. You can't go to the gym once a month, right? Same way you can't address your health once a month. So if you're going to self-advocate, which I think is an important thing for all these people who can't get their problems addressed or want goals that Western medicine can't address, you have to be prepared to actually follow through with those things over time.
Chris, they're going to kick us off. Tell people how they can reach you.
They can reach me at www.upgradepdx, the abbreviation for Portland, upgradepdx.com, or call the office at 971-299-8350. And that's, I don't monitor it, but you can leave a message or even text that number. And on the website, there's a free discovery call that people can book for 10 minutes if they'd like to do that.
Chris, great show. God, everybody's writing, why is the show over so early? Chris will be back again with us next month. Chris, thank you so much. We are so lucky to have you. We'll talk to you soon.
Very welcome. Thank you all.
Thanks,
have
Chris.
a great weekend, guys.
And that'll do it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts. Thanks, Juan.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See See you next week.